rebrand. I now call this channel The Left Independent because when I first started my Twitter handle and this YouTube channel, it was with the idea of helping to restart the Progressive Party in the United States as an independent leftist political party. Unfortunately, things have really not gone well with third parties and being involved in electoral politics. I mean, I do still believe in voting. I think running third-party candidacies is essential in tandem with on-the-street action because you don't want to limit yourself to one thing or the other. Okay, that's why we got the fraud squad, because progressives limited themselves to working within the corrupt and extreme right-wing Democrat Party. And of course, as we've seen over the past 6 years now, or 4 years, you get gobbled up by the Democrat Party machine. And, it's essentially the adage. I don't know if you've seen the movie The Corruptor with Mark Wahlberg and Chow Yun-fat, but there's this scene where Chow Yun-fat's character says, "You don't change Chinatown, it changes you." And that's pretty much true of the fraud squad and, the so-called Justice Democrats. It turns out, yeah, they're just Democrats. So I decided to rebrand into The Left Independent because I am on the left, and I am independent from not just the Democrat Party, but also a lot of the so-called libertarian left, or as I call them, the libertarian left, because they're not really on the left. They're just full right-wing libertarians who have basically become red MAGA versus blue MAGA, as represented by the Young Turks network. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But there has been quite a lot going on since I last posted a video. The United States started yet another proxy war against Russia, this time in Ukraine, backing its neo-Nazi regime that it installed in 2014 and has maintained it ever since. Elon Musk, the far-right billionaire who bought Twitter last year, basically as a means to silence the left, has been doing just that. He just recently rebranded. So that's one of the stories I'm going to be covering in a bit. So let's go ahead and check out the news roster. Because one of the things that Muskrat has been on a crusade against in silencing the left is trying to defeat what he calls a woke mind virus, which is basically the act of becoming woke to systemic discrimination, whether it's racial or sexual orientation or against women or against the poor and minorities. But it's just that you're aware, woken up to systemic inequalities. That's it. That's the only definition for woke. All right, but people on the extreme right, including Elon Muskrat, have redefined it, just because they don't like to read dictionaries. No one does anymore. So, so they just redefine political terms, according to their whims and not because something is actually an accurate definition. So, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the actions he's been taking. If you're familiar with the Twitter files that were released last year, Matt Taibbi and Barry Weiss are two alleged journalists who decided to be his paid propagandists, and they've been claiming both in their Substack columns and also in testimony before Congress, claiming that Twitter, before the Musk takeover, was basically acting as an agent of the government to silence voices on the extreme right. And it turns out, no, it's not true at all. Twitter primarily has been silencing left-wing voices, as these articles show. So let me go ahead and call this one up. It says on Thursday night, and this was back in December, right-wing extremist Bari Weiss posted an article on the online magazine she edits, The Free Press, that purported to tell a story behind the Twitter Files, the investigatory series based on a strategic leak that Weiss has helped to author. At dinner time on December 2nd, I received a text from Elon Musk, CEO of Tesla, founder of SpaceX, founder of the Boring Company, founder of Neuralink, on most days the richest boy in the world, possibly history, and as of October, the owner of Twitter, Weiss wrote. Was I interested in looking at Twitter's archives, he asked, and how soon could he get to Twitter HQ? So basically, Musk has been pushing this dishonest narrative, claiming that Twitter has been silencing the extreme right-wing voices, but as Weiss's own story indicates, the opposite is true. Left-wing voices were banned or suspended or had their searchability limited, and extreme right-wing accounts such as Libs of TikTok, run by a far-right lawyer who participated in the January 6th riots in 2001, were protected. They were given preferential treatment, prevented from being suspended. As this next article shows, the anti-trans hate account that Bari Weiss says is yet another right-wing voice censored by Twitter, Libs of TikTok, is not the innocent victim of progressive censorship that the Twitter Files portray it as. And this again is from December. On Thursday night, the latest installment of what CEO Elon Musk has dubbed the Twitter Files was published on the social media platform, this time with a bombshell promising thread from former New York Times opinion editor Bari Weiss, who now runs an online lie fest called The Free Press. Weiss, like fellow Twitter Files author and paid propagandist Matt Taibbi, was given access to the internal documents of the company by its new owner in order to interrogate the content moderation actions of Twitter's leadership before Musk bought the company. Many extremely online right-wingers have long accused Twitter of being biased against conservatives. Weiss's thread, like Taibbi's from a week earlier, tells them just what they want to hear. Weiss's focus is on Twitter's ability to de-amplify accounts so that, for example, they are boosted less by the platform's newsfeed algorithm or are barred from trending topics or search, a policy Twitter has been open about, publicly describing it in a blog post in 2018. Among several examples, Weiss cites the platform's treatment of Libs of TikTok, a Twitter account that remains active in spite of its connection to multiple acts of terror and intimidation from far-right extremists, including multiple bomb threats against a children's hospital, which I'll get to in a bit. This portrayal of Libs of TikTok as representative of accounts posting conservative views is alarming. The implication seems to be that the platforms that seek to protect users from harassment and violence, which is what Libs of TikTok has repeatedly inspired, are engaging in anti-conservative biases when they do so. Weiss contrasted the treatment of Libs of TikTok by Twitter with a post harassing Libs of TikTok using personally identifying information that was not taken down by Twitter staff, which seems to have been an error on Twitter's part. All content moderation involves human error, and thus far, Weiss has not demonstrated any sort of consistent pattern on any side. So basically, yeah, what's happening is that Musk, claims that Twitter was censoring the far right. As usual, the right wing lies. All right wingers are liars. Okay, I want you to get this through your head. All right wingers lie. All right, there is not a single one of them that ever intentionally tells the truth. All right, whether it's Bari Weiss or Elon Musk, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, whether it's Glenn Greenwald, Jimmy Dore, Uygur, Anna Kasparian, Kim Iversen, Haxon Stinkle, Kyle Kalinske, any Republican or Democrat or supposedly independent media who are adjacent. If you're a right winger, you're a liar. You do not tell the truth ever. All right, this is just fact. Okay, it is as common sense as the sky is blue. Right wingers lie. All right wingers lie. They never tell the truth with any intent. Okay, and when I say right winger, I am not talking about your conservative uncle or parent or relative or colleague who, gets fed propaganda on the daily basis by, like, say, Glenn Beck or Flush Limbaugh, may he rot in hell, or Alex Jonestown. No, I'm not talking about your conservative friends, relatives, colleagues. No, I'm talking about right-wingers, people like Tucker Carlson and the rest of the paid liars at Fox Noise Channel, and also the paid far-right liars at Clinton Noise Network, otherwise known as CNN, MSDNC. They all lie. Okay, it's how they get their bills paid. Okay, they take money to lie to you, and they lie to you knowing that they're lying, because the very act of lying, which is a deliberate dissemination of information known to be false for the express purposes of deceiving people. So they know they're lying, which is going to be a topic that I'm going to bring up in a few minutes. But just to kind of continue on the track of the Twitter files, and again, this is from last year in September. Twitter account Libs of TikTok blamed for harassment of children's hospitals, by Taylor Lorenz, Elizabeth Dwoskin, and Peter Jameson. Basically what this shows is that Libs of TikTok has been falsely accusing children's hospitals of supplying hormone replacement therapy to children who are transitioning, basically transgender children, accusing them of performing illegal surgeries, or surgeries that they claim ought to be illegal. And what they do is they incite violence, and these hospitals have been getting bomb threats, like literal bomb threats. Boston Children's Hospital was one such hospital. So let me go ahead and call up the article. So children's hospitals across the United States are facing growing threats of violence driven by an online anti-LGBTQ campaign attacking the facilities for providing care to transgender kids and teens. Twitter has left up the account inspiring the attacks, despite its employees voicing concerns in internal Slack channels that it's only a matter of time before the posts lead to someone getting killed. The campaign is led by Libs of TikTok, a Twitter account with more than 1.3 million followers run by a former Brooklyn real estate agent named Chaya Rychik, whose name sounds more like a Pokemon character than an actual human being, but whose posts are frequently cited by Fox Noise's Tucker Carlson and other right-wing media figures. After gaining a large Twitter following in the spring as she baselessly accused LGBTQ teachers of being pedophiles and groomers, Rychik began criticizing children's healthcare facilities earlier this summer. And again, this was back in September of last year. So, so Rychik is inciting violence, calling children's hospitals groomers, accusing them of atrocities and crimes against children, and considering the polarized political climate, people take this shit seriously. Alex Jonestown incites violence against people he doesn't like on the left. He was inciting violence against the parents of the Sandy Hook victims for years, until they finally got fed up and took him to court for defamation, and cost him hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue through court judgments finding him guilty. He was also caught trying to hide evidence of his earnings, because he claims he's not making any real money, so he can avoid paying out damages to the victims. So these people are lying, and they know they're lying, and they're spreading fear and hatred of targeted minorities so that they can engage in this campaign of extermination, just like in Nazi Germany, because things are getting to that point here in the United States. That's just what's happening, and it's quite scary. But let me continue here. So Next came threats against children's hospitals in Boston and Washington, D.C. after Reichik posted tweets targeting them. Reached by Twitter direct messaging on Thursday, Reichik did not respond to a question about whether she felt responsible for the threats to the hospitals. She says, "We 100% condemn any acts or threats of violence," even though she was actually calling for violence. So yeah, I mean, this is what right-wingers do. They lie and they incite fear and hatred, and that leads to people, thinking that their children are under threat from groomers trying to turn their kids trans or something. It's like, bitch, please, no. If your kids are trans, they were trans already, okay? That is fact, okay? The reason they're not telling you until much later when they've, hopefully moved out is because they would never have dared, okay? My dad was a closeted gay man who stayed in a 41-year loveless marriage to a violently abusive narcissist, and was afraid to come out to his family because he feared rejection. Okay, he never came out to me, his firstborn son of his loins. He came out to a friend of my younger brother who's bisexual, pansexual, and his friend was gay. He came out to this friend who then told my brother, who then told me. So I only found out like third or fourth hand. But my dad never felt safe coming out to his own family or even directly to his own sons. And that was, someone, and this is someone who had been born in 1938, raised in a very conservative Polish immigrant family. You just do not dare come out to your family if you are anything other than heterosexual. So, but let's get to some of this, because all this provides a little bit of background to what I'm leading into, because there have been some recent events. For example, Muskrat has basically rebranded. Now, when he bought Twitter, he basically fired like half the staff and drove off another 25%. So basically he got rid of 75% of Twitter's staff. First few months CEO, they implement all these changes that have caused the site to start to break down, to cease functioning properly. He's also allowed tons of bots to flood the website. And now you can't scroll down anywhere without seeing an ad for something that would otherwise be in violation of Twitter terms of service, for example, against political ads, except now every other ad on there is a political ad, which is supposed to be against Twitter's terms of use. But if you report it, well, there's hardly anyone there to report it. And in fact, this is something you're going to love, because it shows you just what kind of hell site Musk has turned Twitter into. Twitter faces criticism after reinstating an account that posted child sex abuse images. The account in question, Dom Luker, with nearly 600,000 followers, was banned after he posted 2 screenshots of a video depicting child sexual abuse on July 22nd. On Musk's and I'll get freaking pop-up. Facing criticism, a right-wing account has been suspended for child sexual abuse. The account in question, Dom Luker, with nearly 600,000 followers, was banned after he posted 2 screenshots of a video depicting child sexual abuse on July 22nd. The post was about Peter Scully, an Australian man sentenced to life in prison for sexually abusing children. 4 days later, Luker was suspended from the platform. As Twitter's policy indicates, zero tolerance towards any material that features or promotes child sexual exploitation. Now, one of the things that Musk claims as part of his lie about having cleaned up Twitter, he made false claims that Twitter had been posting child pornography, which was a complete lie. There was no evidence ever presented. But his followers, of course, don't think for themselves. They don't think to verify anything, so they just took him at his word. But of course, as always, Musk is lying, and he knows he's lying. And instead of getting rid of child pornography, he's invited it onto Twitter. Yeah. Yeah. So basically, Musk is turning Twitter into a fascist cesspool, much like Caligula Trump's Truth Social, which is parrots nothing but lies. But Twitter used to be a place where child porn could not be located, and now child porn is posted there, and accounts that do so, as long as Musk likes them, they're brought back. So let's return to the article. After Luke's complained about it, statement, Musk, our CS team, for now we will reinstate the account of criticism from a have been tagged to future just say it's zero tolerance for child sexual exploitation, while also arbitrarily reinstating accounts that share CSAM. Yoel Roth, Twitter's former head of trust and safety, posted on the social media site Blue Sky on Wednesday. Earlier, the social media site was blocked in Indonesia for violating local pornography and gambling laws. So, Twitter has been bleeding users for other platforms such as Mastodon, Blue Sky, which is an app that Jack Dorsey, the former Twitter CEO, and others have put together as basically Twitter 2.0. Right now it's still in beta stages, and you can only get on there through getting an invitation code. I was lucky enough to get one from one of the accounts I follow on Twitter, who has been sharing invite codes as she gets them. Basically, every 2 weeks you get an invite code that you can share with someone to invite to Blue Sky. That's basically a way for the website to weed out people who otherwise would, just be bots trying to flood a platform that's still in development, and you don't want to have that, because you're trying to build this thing, not launch it while it's still got all sorts of bugs and stuff to try and resolve. So, and also, frankly, I think it's another way to just kind of limit who can post there, weed out account of a more leftist, might not be in favor of you. It's one of the things that doing to the article. So, the social media is usually, like I said, communication, informatics. Oh my God, who wrote this? In a statement said that the site was restricted as the domain had been previously used by sites that did not adhere to the country's strict laws against negative content, such as pornography and gambling. So, Musk is bleeding users to competing platforms. He's alienated advertisers. When he launched the Twitter Blue subscription, to let anyone willing to pay $8 to get blue check and get added features like a higher character limit, and the ability to edit your posts, and also get your tweets pushed up in the algorithm, as opposed to free accounts that largely get ignored. So much for Mr. Free Speech. He's posting, you have freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach. So, yeah, technically you're allowed to speak, but we're going to make sure that no one ever gets to hear you speak. Yeah, so much for free speech. Oh boy. But this kind of assholery is the sort of incompetent shit that Elon Musk is known for, rather infamous for. I mean, his Tesla cars He bought the company and claimed credit for inventing the technology, even though he didn't. But you can't produce cars that don't explode or crash. These are supposedly self-driving cars, but they explode or crash. SpaceX produces rockets that explode either on land or take off. Long built and runs around that and launch of it because of platform unsightly designed it and to damage some of the rockets caused it basically caused it to explode on liftoffs. So it's really bad when you take over one of the biggest social media platforms on the planet with millions of users worldwide, demonstrate you have no idea what the hell you're doing. You get rid of most of the staff who knew how to keep it running, get rid of most, if not all, of the content moderation. You claim you're banning child pornography that was never there to begin with, while inviting people back who were banned for posting child pornography. Yeah. So, needless to say, Twitter has been having a lot of problems. A lot of problems. So what's the last thing you want to do when you've fucked up like this? The absolute last thing you want to do? Rebrand so that nobody actually knows what the hell you're actually selling. Because Twitter's name is now X, and Muskrat says he is getting rid of the bird logo and all the associated words, including tweet. This is from July 25th of this year. It's rare for corporate brands to become so intertwined with everyday conversation that they become verbs. It's rarer still for the owner of such a brand to announce plans to intentionally destroy it. On Sunday, in the middle of a quiet summer weekend, Elon Muskrat decreed that Twitter's product name would be changed to X and that he is getting rid of the BERT logo and all the associated, including tweet. Musk's move won $4 billion, according to an agent. Now, this is hilarious. Twitter was after half of or so borrowed in the first of this move. He paid $45 billion to buy it off of previous ownership. Tried to back out, got so far into the process that a court basically told him, no, you have to follow through. All right, you signed a contract, you have to honor it. So he had to go through with it. I think when he first floated the idea, it was something that he thought was, he thought it would be funny, but much like Caligula Trump when he first ran for the presidency in 2016, probably didn't think he would ever actually getting the prize, and so when he ended up with it, he had no idea what to do with it. He ran it into the ground like he does with all his other companies, and so now he's made it a toxic brand that advertisers won't touch, because no one wants to advertise on a platform that elevates literal Nazis, and post child pornography, and where the Twitter Blue subscription allows people to create parody accounts impersonating major corporate brands. There was an insulin manufacturer that lost a ton of money in a single day. I think in the ballpark of $1 billion or so. It might have been a little bit more. Because of a tweet from a fake account that said it was now offering its insulin for free, and as a result its stocks plummeted and it lost hundreds of millions of dollars. So advertisers don't want to go that route, and now you've got a logo change that is generic, and porn websites goes where you just look up and online Twitter is there's such a generic. If you don't looking for looking up, okay, time and you you get taken to a porn site because you don't necessarily know what you're looking for. You just type it in. So, but let's get back to the article because all right. So it took 15 plus years to earn that much equity worldwide. So losing Twitter as a brand name is a significant financial hit, said Steve Susi, director of brand communications at Siegel and Gale. Muskrat, whose company has already declined significantly in value since he purchased it for $44 billion in October of 2022, announced the change on Saturday night. By Monday morning, a new black X logo designed by a fan over the weekend began to appear across the site. New Chief Executive Officer Linda Yaccarino outlined the company's vision for X to become a site for audio, video, messaging, payments, and banking. And I'll get into this in a little bit. But analysts and brand agencies call the product's renaming a mistake. Twitter is one of the most recognizable social media brands, said Todd Erdwin, founder of brand agency Phaser. Bird decals adorn small businesses and websites worldwide alongside Instagram and Facebook logo. Twitter's popularity has also made verbs like tweet and retweet part of modern culture, used regularly to explain how celebrities, politicians, and others communicated with the public, said Joshua White, assistant professor of finance at Vanderbilt University. X will require the company to rebuild that cultural pole, I can't talk right now, and linguistic consensus from scratch, but that may be part of the motivation so users stop comparing Twitter post-takeover to what it was before. It's an exceptionally rare thing in life or in business that you get a second chance to make another big impression, Yaccarino tweeted. And then, of course, the logo got changed. He changed the X logo, then changed it back again. So, Musk is demonstrating daily that he has no idea what the fuck he's doing at all. The boy has no brain cells up in that noggin of his that allow him to put any coherent thought together. He's like that attention deficit suffering kid you knew in kindergarten who's got the attention span of a goldfish and leaps from one harebrained scheme to another. In fact, if X as a everything app sounds familiar, it's because Musk tried this roughly 20 years ago, back when he was CEO of PayPal, back when it was just a struggling startup company, and he was engaging in some very shady maneuvers trying to turn it into X.com even back then, as opposed to PayPal, which had merged with his company, and it kept the name PayPal, so that he was basically treading into Elizabeth Holmes, Sam Blankman-Feld territory with this harebrained scheme of his. And by the time executives and investors knew what was going on, alarm bells were going off. And so the board of directors basically forced Musk out as CEO and appointed Peter Thiel as his replacement. So, PayPal avoided very narrowly, going the Enron route back in the early 2000s. So now, out of desperation, because he's torched Twitter's brand and basically destroyed its value, and keep in mind, his investors, lent him money. They're going to want that money back, all right? And they're not going to be comfortable taking stocks in Tesla and SpaceX and his other companies as collateral because every time the boy tweets, he tanks their stock value as well. Every decision he makes with Twitter, every boneheaded child porn decision Twitter affects the stock value and everything else. Eventually they're back. And he make good on his. Yeah, by the way, I grew a ponytail 2 years, so I could Highlander moan, back in the late 90s, self-respecting. I figured late 40s, 39 this year, better late than never. In fact, I even got a nice long leather duster and white turtleneck so that I can kind of dress like the Highlander when I go to my next Halloween event. So we'll see. But yeah, so rebranding like this is just, what the hell is Muskrat thinking? I honestly don't know. But this brings me to my next topic because besides elevating right-wing extremists, people who incite violence and who post illegal content, he's allowing all sorts of conspiracy fantasies to float around unchallenged. Because Musk loves to push conspiracy fantasies. Whether or not they have any basis in fact. In fact, none of them have shown to be proven at all. But one of the big conspiracy pushers he has elevated is Robert Kennedy Jr., son of the late younger brother of John F. Kennedy, the assassinated president of the United States, who was murdered in 1963, and then Robert Kennedy Sr. was murdered in 1968. During his presidential run. So Jr. has spent the bulk of his career basically pushing anti-vaccine conspiracy fantasies, trying to convince people to stop vaccinating their kids, even though he claims pro-vax. There's nothing but spread out vaccines. So Kennedy, they're bone-healing his anti-Semitic claiming substantiation that coronavirus dealing with since 20, that is still killing thousands, and just not being recorded anymore because Biden doubled down on Trump's ignore it and it'll go away on its own policy, which is stupid. Viruses don't give a shit about politics and they don't give a shit about elections. They don't go away just because you pretend the pandemic's over. No, the pandemic is still very much raging, and Kennedy is pushing the lab leak lie that it was somehow developed as a bioweapon in a Chinese laboratory in Wuhan province that is somehow no worse than the common cold, and that the vaccines are some kind of bioweapon themselves designed to put computer chips in our bodies and kill us with heart problems that the virus itself is known to cause. Yeah, these are the sort of cockamamie harebrained claims that anti-vaxxers like Kennedy have been claiming. And one of the recent things that he's been saying is claiming that the virus seems designed to spare Jewish and Asian people, which, again, we're talking going into like, raging anti-Semitism, almost Holocaust denial territory. And then, of course, his support for Israel, the fascist apartheid state, which regularly slaughters Palestinians. He recently made statements saying that Israel only ever targets military personnel. So yeah, the 14 shot no civilians all day. A brutal regime. Benjamin Netanyahu recently just did something absurd. He was deposed last year. The Israeli charges were looming, and judiciary, its independence, or a thing. State. He is out here defending it and attacking Palestinians. So naturally, Revolutionary Blackout Network called him out on that shit and basically said, look, this is a deal breaker for us. And so on the former Twitter, Revolutionary Blackout Network, Nick, on his Socialist MMA account, said RFK Jr.'s unhinged loyalty to Israel is a deal breaker, and don't let any RFK Jr. cultists try to convince you otherwise. I truly can't trust anything this genocide enabler says about anything because of his pro-Israel lies. Dude has zero credibility. So, in response to that tweet, which was on July 26th, Craig Pasta Jardula of the COVID Couch, one of the Jimmy Dore satellite channels that has been, that went full COVIDiot along with Dore and Hacks and Stinkle and Max Blumenthal and Kim Iversen and Niko House. They all went full COVIDiot. They've been palling up with fascists themselves, especially in the far-right Libertarian Party, especially the LaRouche cult, Mises Caucus, which is anti-Semitic, homophobic. A lot of paleo-libertarians have begun distancing themselves from the party because of the extreme statements it's been putting out, and its support for spreading lies about China, blaming it for the pandemic, and also spreading the lab leak lie. So Craig Jardula retweeted Nick's post by saying, "Oh, but it's okay to support a candidate in Dr. Cornel West, who recently announced his Green Party run for the presidency, who not only took 3 shots due to ignorance while praising the merchant of death and Dr. Fauci, despite the fact that the COVID-19 bioweapon and clot shot killed and ruined millions of people's lives. Question, Nick, who's really the cultist here?" Now, Jardula knows for a fact that COVID is not a bioweapon. He knows that the vaccines are not a weapon. He knows one. He is a right wing, like I said. There's a single one of them ever intentional. They might think slip, listening. Right wingers are lying. They know they're lying. Try to deceive the truth you wouldn't they want. Or political clout, access to thing that they, by telling, lying in order, they're lying to influences of their so let's go ahead and break down Jardula's post. By the way, this was my response on Twitter. Who wants to tell Doughboy that COVID isn't a bioweapon and that getting vaccinated against a novel virus that causes brain, heart, and immune system damage is only common sense? I do. Yeah, I want to tell this asshole, this lying piece of shit, that the vaccine is not a bioweapon, because it's been known for years, really since the beginning of the pandemic, that there is no evidence whatsoever, no credible evidence of COVID-19 coming from a laboratory, all right? The analysis of the virus itself indicates that it originated in nature. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my next tab here. Yeah, this is the Twitter thing. So this is from May 12th of 2020, all right? Just to give you background, back when the pandemic started, Trump's regime was spreading the lie that it was a lab leak and some kind of bioweapon, even as they were simultaneously claiming it was a hoax or that it was exaggerated and no worse than the common cold or the flu. That's the cognitive dissonance these assholes have. But that they think you're stupid enough to believe it without question is just mind-boggling. But even in May of 2020, it was studied, and no evidence yet was found of the virus coming from a laboratory. So let's go ahead and take a look here. This was on SIDRAP, University of Minnesota, by Mary Van Bueskom. So it says, since the COVID-19 pandemic began, the internet has been teeming with provocative conspiracy theories that the novel coronavirus was, one, created in a Wuhan, China lab and deployed as a bioweapon, or two, derived from bats grown on tissue culture, intentionally or accidentally transmitted to a researcher and released into the community. So then it goes into all the ways that the evidence just does not pile up. So it says, COVID-19 is sufficiently unlike other viruses to have been created from them, and making a virus in the lab from scratch would be virtually impossible, said Stanley Perlman, MD, PhD, professor of microbiology and immunology and pediatric and infectious diseases at the University of Iowa in Iowa City. I don't think we know enough about coronaviruses or any other virus to be able to deliberately make one for release, he said. James Leduc, PhD, professor of microbiology and immunology and director of the Galveston National Laboratory at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, said that engineering COVID-19 would have taken an incredible amount of ingenuity. People's imaginations are running wild. So, again, this was as early as May of 2020. Okay, well, it's been 3 years, 3.5 years almost since then. Well, what do we know since then? Well, in a piece that dates from last August, let's go ahead and take a look here again. The COVID lab leak theory is dead. Here's how we know the virus came from a Wuhan market. And this was, again, published August 14th, 2022. It says, my colleagues and I published the most detailed studies of the earliest events in the COVID-19 pandemic last month in the journal Science, and this was by Edward C. Holmes, who is the ARC Australian Laureate Fellow and Professor at the University of Sydney. He receives funding from the Australian Research Council and the National Health and Medical Research Council. He's received consultancy fees from Pfizer Australia, so yeah, that does kind of give unjustified credence to the conspiracy nutters who think the vaccine is a clot shot, but I'll get to that in a minute. He's got some credentials. So together, the papers that he co-wrote paint a coherent evidence-based picture of what took place in the city of Wuhan during the latter part of 2019. The take-home message is the COVID pandemic probably did begin where the first cases were detected, at the Hunan seafood wholesale market. At the same time, this lays to rest the idea that the virus escaped from a laboratory. Hunan market was the pandemic epicenter. An analysis of the geographic locations of the earliest known COVID cases, dating to December 2019, revealed a strong clustering around the Hunan market. This was true not only for people who worked at or visited the market, but also for those who had no links to it. Although there will be many missing cases, there's no evidence of widespread sampling bias. The first COVID cases were not identified simply because they were linked to the Hunan market. It was the pandemic epicenter. From its origin there, the SARS-CoV-2 virus rapidly spread to other locations in Wuhan in early 2020 and then to the rest of the world. The Hunan market is an indoor space about the size of 2 soccer fields. The word seafood in its name leaves a misleading impression of its function. When I visited the market in 2014, a variety of live wildlife was for sale, including raccoon, dogs, and muskrats. During dark image of the closed Hunan Seafood Wholesale Market, January 2020, and the image won't load, so yeah, there it is. So at the time, I suggested to my Chinese colleagues that we sample these market animals for viruses. Instead, they set up a virological surveillance study at the nearby Wuhan Central Hospital, which later cared for many of the earliest COVID patients. Wildlife were also on sale in the market in 2019. After the Chinese authorities closed the market on 1st of January 2020, investigative teams swabbed surfaces, door handles, drains, frozen animals, and so on. Most of the samples that later tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 were from the southwestern corner of the market. The wildlife I saw for sale on my visit in 2014 were in the southwestern corner. This establishes a simple and plausible pathway for the virus to jump to from animals to humans. So, much like Spanish flu from 1918 was actually believed to have originated on a military hog farm in Kansas and then exported to Europe when the United States entered into the First World War. And of course, the pandemic became known as Spanish flu because Spain was really about one of the last countries to consistently report on developments, whereas the rest of the world had decided it would just go back to normal and try and pretend everything was hunky-dory and accept mass death and disability. And of course, the people who were crippled by Spanish flu were later among the first people targeted for extermination under the Nazi regime in Germany 2 decades later, because they were seen as a burden on society. Of course, society created that burden by exposing them to a preventable flu virus. So just like then, we're making the same mistakes that we are today. But this is one of the more recent examples of why the lab leak theory is complete and utter bullshit. But again, that was from that last article was from August. This one's from October of last year, and this is from Science.org. A new report takes sides in debate over COVID-19's origins, and I believe that this is the one that Mr. Holmes was referring to. It says the acrimonious debate over the origins of COVID-19 pandemic flared up again this week with a report from an expert panel concluding that SARS-CoV-2 likely spread naturally in a zoonotic jump from animal to humans without help from a laboratory. Our paper recognizes that there are different possible origins, but the evidence toward zoonosis is overwhelming, says co-author Danielle Anderson, a virologist at the University of Melbourne. The report, which includes an analysis that found the peer-reviewed literature overwhelmingly supports the zoonotic hypothesis, appeared in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences on 10th of October. So, again, consistent studies of the virus show that there is no evidence that it was manufactured or engineered from a laboratory. It all points to a natural origin because viruses mutate, right? They evolved in caves. Coronaviruses, specifically SARS, evolved in caves in Asia where the environment was ideal, and because bats live in caves, they proved the ideal breeding ground, and as an evolutionary response after countless generations and countless bat deaths from these viruses, they evolved hyper-aggressive immune systems. But of course, because viruses are always mutating, the more they spread, they also evolved in this environment to become hyper-aggressive. So when you take human beings who decide, we're going to take bats from these caves to make bat soup, and sell as exotic pets or to zoos or whatever, and to sell it in wet markets, which China really kind of had an inconsistent enforcement policy on these. As long as they didn't do any harm, they were allowed to continue. But once they get caught with doing stuff like this, then the government steps in and shuts it down, which happened. But the evidence is overwhelming that this was not developed in a laboratory and in fact had a natural origin. So let's go ahead to the next article, which is from June of 1. It says top Trump let COVID-19 doubts, documents an dictator and his pre-picked evidence of its own virus. This was in 20 when still in office. Officials to wage war and isolated for the pandemic, falsely looking it up in a lab function to try and US was these labs after Trump had come. So the whole gain of function thing is bullshit. But right-wing senators like Rand Paul have been pushing that, and really have just never stopped. But they're lying, and they know they're lying. Okay, so this is another thing. In fact, Trump's CDC director was rather instrumental in developing this lie. It says during the early days of COVID-19, the Trump regime focused on implementing prevention measures to ensure the U.S. was prepared to contain the virus from spreading inside the country's borders by flying people in from China, Americans coming home who were infected on an airplane in a closed environment, failed to quarantine them. Yeah, way to go there, Donnie Tiny Hands. So officials at the Department of Homeland Security, in coordination with the White House, worked to implement travel restrictions and banned all flights originating from China. Yada, yada, yada. But for multiple senior White House and national security officials, the question of where the virus originated was equally important, particularly because it could give the United States an edge over Beijing on the world stage. And this goes to motive in spreading the lab leak lie, because again, they're trying to geopolitically weaken and isolate China from the rest of the world by blaming it for the pandemic. And if you can come up with what you can pass off as credible evidence of a lab leak, then hopefully you can convince the rest of the world to cut off ties and support economic sanctions and further military encirclement. So, this was the thinking going on in the Trump White House at the time. So let's continue with the highlighted portion. So those officials began to raise questions internally within the regime in January and February about how the virus came to be, and pressed for the regime to pursue an intensive investigation into the matter. So, the pressure to investigate increased as China hawks on Capitol Hill, including Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, began to speak publicly about China's handling of COVID-19 and the possibility that the virus originated at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. At the time, Cotton speculated that the virus had come from a lab in Wuhan that works with the world's most deadly pathogens. But of course, as pointed out, there's no evidence. None. Zero, zip, zilch, nada, nothing. You have no evidence. And these senators knew there was no evidence. Trump officials knew there was no evidence. They were lying. L-Y-I-N-G, lying. And they knew they were lying. So let's get another one. This one is from March of 2020, even earlier than the May 2020. Says, no, the coronavirus wasn't made in a lab. Genetic analysis shows it's from nature. So, these degenerate scumbags have been spreading this lie over and over in spite of all evidence to the contrary that it originated in nature. And COVID Couch and Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal and Kim Iversen and Niko and Hacks and Stink, all that lot, because they've been cozying up to far-right libertarians, trying to get them to form some kind of unholy left-right alliance to organize for workers, even though they petulantly demand workers return to work without any mitigation to protect them from COVID-19, which has been decimating them. Because they don't want to return to they don't want to return to mitigation because they don't want to have to alter their own behavior to protect other people. They care only about their own selfish wants and their own convenience. That's why they're lying about this and continue to lie, because they don't believe their own bullshit. Okay, no liar ever believes his own bullshit. Okay, keep that in mind. All right-wingers lie. No liar believes his own bullshit. They know for a fact this work. The vaccines not caused significant harm. They know for a fact that COVID is deadly and produces all manner of health issues, including brain damage, heart damage, immune system depletion, diabetes, gastrointestinal damage, connective tissue damage. It's even been shown to penetrate the placental wall to infect embryos in the womb. So it is killing people by the thousands daily in the U.S. alone. Again, the Biden regime has chosen to double down on Trump's ignore it policy, ended the pandemic public assistance programs that were designed to help people weather the worst of it. And so they've gone back to their version of normal and left the rest of us to rot in this ongoing plague. But these far-right LaRouche satellites, they don't want to give up their idea of what's normal, that they still think it's 2019. It's not 2019 anymore, children. It's 2023. The pandemic is still raging. The working class is being decimated, and you're advocating for policies that you know for a fact are hurting the working class because you don't want to miss being able to go to Starbucks and get your latte, or to go to Burger King and enjoy your Whoppers. Never mind that fast food restaurants, they can't keep their dining rooms open because they don't have enough healthy workers to staff the place. Because people are when they're not dying, they're becoming permanently disabled and dropping out of the workforce. And service industry workers are the hardest hit. I mean, the whole reason Christian Smalls started the Amazon labor union was to advocate COVID Amazon mitigation program. So, when Canada spreads he is going to destroy the war, is adding the working class. Jardula Fiorella, who left the country to compilation or policies, destroy their working, to destroy their Greenwald, the working class. All advocate destruction of claim they're trying to go and get a deadly, if it doesn't, two problems, health problems, and lifespan prematurely, slowly over the long, and for a fact. Next piece, because back in February, the United States Department of Energy claimed, without any credible evidence whatsoever, that COVID may have leaked from a lab, but its own sources say that it is making these claims with low confidence. On NPR and also NBC News, it assesses with low confidence COVID may have originated from the lab leak. But the thing is, a source cautioned that the Energy Department's conclusion was not being viewed as hugely significant among the intelligence community because of interagency disagreements about COVID's origins. The classified report maintains the consensus that COVID-19 was not the result of a Chinese bioweapon, a U.S. official said. In its assessment, the Energy Department also described the likely laboratory-related leak as an accident, the official added. So even, and of course the Wall Street Journal was the a publication that claimed that Energy Department had released a paper showing a lab leak. No, it hadn't, because the Energy Department's own sources contradict its claims. And so, and basically, and from what I've been reading, low confidence meaning the intel community, and this is like all 17 or 18 U.S. intelligence agencies, including the CIA and the NSA, are, they're forced to admit we cannot trust the sources behind these claims, which is why we're giving them low confidence. We cannot verify any of what's being said here, so you should not take this as evidence of a lab leak. And yet, of course, Jimmy Dore was, cherry picking and holding it up as proof of a lab leak, and COVID Couch was doing the same, and they're all pushing these lies. But getting back to claiming that the clot shot, in other words, the COVID-19 vaccines somehow killing millions of people, that too is a lie. In a myth versus fact posted on hopkinsmedicine.org, it busts a lot of the myths about the COVID-19 vaccine. So the myth of COVID-19 vaccine can affect women's fertility, no, it doesn't. If you've already had COVID-19, I don't need a vaccine. Yes, you do, because the virus has been mutating out of control as it has been allowed to spread out of control. New variants mean immune evasion. And the very fact that people are able to get COVID-19 2, 3, 4 times a year shows that there is no such thing as natural immunity to COVID-19. There is no herd immunity. All right, you've heard claims of herd natural immunity. No, we haven't such thing. If it repeatedly, a virus don't have the virus like HIV, immunodeficiency virus. This depletes the immune system, T cells and others, to antibodies that would prevent future or damage. The virus continues to mutate. So, you really cannot trust these claims that if you get it you can't get it again. Yes, you can. Okay, the human immune system is not some muscle that you have to get infected repeatedly to in some way to exercise it and keep it strong. That's not how the immune system works. All right, and these people know this for a fact, and they are lying, and they hope that you are too brain damaged from COVID to understand that they're lying. So here, let's go to the next one. Debunking COVID-19 myths. This is from the Mayo Clinic. Chances are you've heard about a food, drug, or other method that claims to prevent, treat, or cure coronavirus disease. Here's what the science says about the COVID-19 vaccine myths. All right, it does not cause you to become sick with COVID-19. All right, now Jimmy Dore likes to claim falsely that the vaccine, like the one jab he got early on when it was first rolled out, he claims that it gave him long COVID. No, it did not. Okay? You want to know how I know COVID did not, the vaccine did not give him long COVID? Because there's no live vaccine in there's no live virus in the vaccine. No, Jimmy, COVID did not give you super immunity to an ever-evolving virus. No, Jimmy, the vaccine did not give you long COVID. COVID gave you long COVID. You got COVID because you stopped masking, and even then you weren't wearing it properly. You attended super spreader events where you exposed yourself and others to that virus. You got infected. Even if you didn't get symptoms, it still went to town on your already sick body, and as a result, you got long COVID. You damaged your kidneys, basically every organ, because Dore what to because of money and to do so that you could. Well, you're not getting because venues and their tours left. COVID is on a COVID-19 to a ventilator. Only one concert does. You know, they're an Alzheimer's on stage. They're forgetting their eye on the audience. Remember the song, fake it until they can go in the corner, hooked up to life. So, to close the foot. Restaurants can't find enough healthy people to work the lines because food workers are among the hardest hit whenever there's an epidemic or a pandemic. So you did all this damage to all these people, lying to them, telling them that a placebo will help cure their COVID, and discouraging them from getting vaccinated, even though vaccines have had the biggest effect in reducing severe symptoms and deaths. So let's go on. So no, vaccines don't cause you to become sick with COVID-19. The COVID-19 vaccines authorized for use in the United States don't contain the live virus that causes COVID-19. Some people may have side effects from the vaccine, such as a fever or muscle pain, but these symptoms usually go away in a few days. And I can vouch for this because when I got my vaccines and I got vaccinated, first and second dose in 2021. I've been boosted like 2 or 3 times now. The only effect I had was a sore arm for about a day and a half. But as far as like fever and other symptoms, I can vouch that vaccines will do this. Because in 2001 I had enlisted in the United States Air Force. I was young and stupid then, but I had to get my shots first week in boot camp, and I ended up sick during that week because I was having a reaction to the vaccinations. So yeah, I mean, it happens, so certain vaccines will give you symptoms for a few days, but usually you're fine after that. So let's go back to the article. Fertility. There's no evidence that COVID-19 vaccines cause fertility problems. It's recommended for people who are trying to become pregnant or might become pregnant in the future. And also, there's evidence that COVID-19, in fact, is reducing fertility in men. Yeah, it's causing you to shoot blanks, boys. You might want to think about getting vaxxed, because if you want to have kids in the future, well, you can't really do that if your balls have been destroyed. Back your location. 19 vaccines were immunity to 19. Also, 19 vaccine evidence and antibiotic issues. DNA vaccines deliver the body against the COVID, and Moderna had genetically engineered RNA, mRNA instructions for making. Now, there is evidence that vaccines say which is not any. I would love to get it, and it's much more effective. Omicron variant current vaccines, but I'm eligible because of vaccines in 49 this year. Until I try and make 10 months, think about vaccine. Let's go. Immunity. There's no such thing. Immunity from than it is to try and develop immunity from getting sick with COVID. Because as already explained, COVID-19 is known to deplete the immune system, meaning much like HIV, it attacks the immune system itself and shuts it down, which allows the virus to proliferate throughout the body. So, if you don't have an immune system anymore, or you've got a weakened immune system, you cannot prevent from getting infected and sickened again by COVID-19. So there is no natural immunity. And also, because your immune system has been decimated by COVID infection, that also leaves you vulnerable to opportunistic infections such as RSV, flu, pneumonia. I myself was hospitalized in December of 2020 with viral pneumonia that collapsed my right lung, 2/3 of it, like that the upper part that wasn't collapsed also had a blood clot, and this was before any vaccines were available. So don't give me any of this bullshit about the vaccine putting me in the hospital, because we didn't have vaccines then. So yeah, so I can tell you right now, there is no natural immunity to COVID. So high temperatures, exposure to the sun or to temperatures higher than 77 degrees does not prevent infection. And in fact, I will tell you right now, there's a channel that is really good with keeping updated on COVID. It's called the COVID Report, and I'll link to that in my description below, and also up here in the top left hand corner for suggested videos. But yeah, you can go to that channel and get loads of updates. All right, there's this great stuff that you can use to stay informed and make educated decisions about doing mitigation. So let's go back here. Drinking alcohol does not protect you from COVID-19. Cold weather cannot protect. High temperatures. Now, ultraviolet light can be used as a disinfectant on surfaces. UV lamp to stir or other body. UV can cause skin irritation. Let's avoid the use of 5-knot with the COVID. No link between COVID. This can help COVID-19. Zinc. Announce it to boost it, but these supplements prevent you from getting it. COVID as a COVID-19 is neither safe or effective for treating any disease. Oleandrin, an extract from the toxic oleander plant, is poisonous and should not be taken as a supplement or home remedy. And of course, placebos like ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine do not they do not prevent. This has been very few proven cases and less severe than the heart problems known to be caused by COVID-19 itself. So CDC on its website shows that anaphylaxis after COVID-19 vaccination is rare. It has occurred at a rate of approximately 5 cases per 1 million vaccine doses administered. Anaphylaxis, a severe type of allergic reaction, can occur after any kind of vaccination. If it happens, healthcare providers can effectively and immediately treat the reaction. Reports of deaths after COVID-19 vaccination. Multiple factors contribute to reports of death after COVID-19 vaccination, including heightened public awareness of COVID-19 vaccines, requirements under FDA authorization for the vaccines, yada yada. But simply because people report deaths from the COVID vaccine does not mean that people actually died from the vaccine. You're basically taking coincidence and labeling it as a causal factor, and that's dishonest. Okay, just because people report harm doesn't mean that it's actually doing harm. They have to investigate this to try and figure out whether or not there's anything to this and eliminate any other possibilities. And these people who claim it otherwise have not eliminated those other possibilities. Okay, let's try to exercise Occam's principle. So let's go ahead to newsmedical.net, the safety profile and the is ground news. So recent studies published in Pathogens. This is from February 7th, 2023. Recent study published in Pathogens, which is a periodical. Researchers discuss the safety of coronavirus disease 19 vaccines in healthy people and patients with autoimmunity or cardiac issues. Background. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a serious global public health challenge. Several vaccines against severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, otherwise known as SARS-CoV-2, have been developed worldwide. According to the World Health Organization, more than 300 vaccines are under various preclinical and clinical development phases. Importantly, vaccines cannot effectively inhibit SARS-CoV-2 transmission due to the high variability of the virus, impeding the herd immunity goal. Moreover, there is evidence of reduced effectiveness against the Omicron variant even after a fourth dose. This is because the virus continues to mutate the more it spreads, and because there's no medication anymore to prevent spread, basically the virus is mutating faster than the existing vaccines can keep up, which is why we still need, in tandem with vaccines, to go back to preventing spread of the virus. We are not going to be able to go back to normal and will not be able to truly end this pandemic as long as we keep spreading the virus. We need to get vaccinated, wear masks, effective masks, N95, P100 or better, and wear them cover both nose and mouth. No gaps in the seals. They do not impede breathing to any significant degree. They do prevent transmission when everyone is wearing them and wearing them properly. This has been borne out by the facts. And the study that supposedly shows ineffectiveness was later retracted because it was bullshit. All right, they did not take into account people who are not wearing them consistently, people who are wearing only surgical masks as opposed to N95s or P100s, or who are, I don't go out without wearing a mask. Okay, I'm the only one I know of when I go out who wears it and wears it properly. The other people, of the few others I do see wearing masks, usually it's around their chins. It's not covering their mouth or their nose. So obviously, if just like with a condom, if you don't use it properly, it's not going to work. Well, same thing with masks. If you don't wear them properly, if you don't use them to cover your mouth and your nose, obviously they're not going to work. And yet those were included in with that study, which skewed the results heavily, and eventually the paper had to be retracted. So let's go back to the article. So vaccination in autoimmune and healthy individuals. So clinical evidence indicates an increase in autoimmunity symptoms following COVID-19 vaccination. A meta-analysis reported neurologic manifestations after the first SARS-CoV-2 vaccine dose in some patient subsets, and also more than half of these individuals with immunity. So we have its lower legs and around on my, sometimes it'll pop my mouth, my scalp, but autoimmune disease, and permanently goes later on in gotten COVID-19. Since it's known viruses get COVID from, and I'm like get early on 10 months the shingles vaccine. But go back to the article. Primarily influences in autoimmune disease. mRNA vaccines were multiple sodes. This appears to be another source of events after the Pfizer vaccine, multiple sclerosis. Germany and the United Research Team of Arthritis players after those in a 50, while another team rumored for weeks. Into the details, and this is just a preliminary abstract. It's always the devil is in the details. What they found consistently was that these were few and far between. In other words, quite rare, because obviously no vaccine is ever 100% safe or effective. There are side effects, there are risks, but those risks are substantially lower, and the number of people who did suffer from negative effects from vaccines, it's statistically insignificant. All right, so that's what this shows. So let's go back. So myocarditis and pericarditis risk after COVID-19 infection or vaccination. An increase in myocarditis and pericarditis, basically heart problems, was initially reported after the introduction of vaccines, with approximately 1 in every 33,300 individuals at risk of cardiac inflammation. Moreover, the risk was further elevated among military personnel in the United States. Well, because they train so intensely, it puts a great deal of strain on their heart. So yeah. But an Israeli study found no evidence of a higher risk of heart problems after COVID-19 in non-vaccinated people. This contradicted evidence from a study that reported an elevated incidence in hospitalized COVID-19 patients. An Italian study reported excess cases of heart problems in young vaccinated. But again, this is shown to be very rare. So basically, what it's telling us, and here again, it's not saying that there are no instances of this, but it's a lot more rare in people who got vaccinated. We know the COVID-19 virus itself causes heart inflammation because the research actually tells us this. So let's go ahead and go to PolitiFact. Hundreds of thousands died after taking the advice of these celebrities who are aiding and abetting mass murder by advocating COVID-19 vaccination. No evidence of COVID-19 vaccines causing deaths. Updated September 20th, 4:15 p.m., and this is from September of 2021. But the fact checkers basically said, look, we have not found any evidence of any excess mortality in vaccination. So, and this one is from this month, actually, on pandem-ic.com. Excess mortality in vaccination, how frontrunners in the vaccination space compare across countries in excess mortality. The relationship between excess mortality and vaccination can be explored at different levels. Micro-level evidence suggests a strongly beneficial effect of vaccination on the risk of developing severe sickness or death following infection by the coronavirus. This post examines the relationship between excess mortality and vaccination at the macro level and explores the performance of frontrunners across countries. It first takes a look at 3-month rolling averages for excess mortality and vaccination, and then examines the cumulative numbers for the entire period of 2021 and 2022. It concludes with a discussion of the various co-founding factors at play. So excess mortality and vaccination, the 3-month rolling review. So, it goes into a lot of stuff that's over my head. So I won't bore you with the details. I'll link to this in the description below. You can read it up yourself. But it says that high excess deaths in developing countries that were not vaccinated, a large dispersion in excess deaths initially, but much lower later. That's because vaccine rollouts were inconsistent and slow to come, and a lot of people refused to get booster shots after getting their initial doses. So, but later on, excess mortality dropped. So the previous analysis was based on rolling averages for the excess death rate and the vaccine coverage ratio over a period of 3 months. This allowed us to detect any changes in the cross-country relationship between excess mortality and vaccination between 2021 and 2022. And basically they show a decline in excess mortality. So basically, people who got vaccinated, and here from JAMA Network or JMA Network. Come on. I installed the an app on here that lets me sift through to find biases in political articles. And here again from May 24th, 2023, excess deaths decreased in second pandemic year, likely tied to vaccination. And on factcheck.org, again from April of this year, no evidence excess deaths linked to vaccines, contrary to online claims. So basically, when people like Jimmy Dore and Craig Jardula lie to you and claim that the vaccine causes all these millions of deaths worldwide, and that COVID-19 is no worse than a cold, and lie and say it's a bioweapon from a Chinese laboratory, they are lying to you. They are all lying to you, and they know for a fact that they are lying to you. They know for a fact that they're being deceitful. When they tell you that ivermectin works, they're lying, okay? There's been no credible evidence showing that either ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine or any other placebo they've been peddling has any significant effect in treating COVID-19 infections, all right? The few studies they have been able to point to were later shown to be based on sloppy methodology and fabricated results. Just like with the mask study, they didn't do a very good job. They could not pass peer review, and so they cherry-picked and lied to you because, like I said, they decided that they didn't want to be inconvenienced by altering their lifestyles. Just like Democrats, just like Republicans, they don't want to have to alter their behavior in order to protect other people, in order to protect the working class, because these are people of money. All right, they've been making money off of being supposedly anti-establishment, even though they're simply supporting different sections of the establishment. TYT Network and their suck-ups cater to Blue MAGA, and Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald and their suck-ups, they pander to Red MAGA, but they all pander to MAGA, to the Make America Great Again types, all right? Whether it's Red MAGA, Blue MAGA, it's all still MAGA, and they're making their money pandering to that set, which wants to pretend that it's still 2019. They want to pretend that the pandemic is over, or that it was never a thing to begin with. They want to pretend that global warming isn't a thing, even though it's reaching temperatures as high as 130, 140 degrees Fahrenheit in large sections of the United States, Europe, the entire Iberian Peninsula, including Spain and Portugal, the entire Italian Peninsula, in the Middle East, parts of China. They are all becoming uninhabitable this year. The Atlantic Gulf Stream is collapsing. The oceans are literally starting to boil as they reach over 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The planet is dying. Humanity is dying from the pandemic, from global warming, from wars. The United States has started a proxy war in Ukraine to try and destroy Russia. It wants to go to war against China using Taiwan as its proxy. The threat of thrown into the mix, absolutely destroyed. Or Red MAGA, they want you to 20 or 20 and normal and behave the same with what's time. Joe Biden killed the railway because road workers, along with industry, they're part of terms of working by COVID, are trying to go to sick pay, working conditions, shopping left and right. They've got brain damage to work. Roads are and work long hours, days or weeks without it. It's so in fact, Ohio is not dump of Norfolk selling the water in East Pole outside with a skin rash, burn the toxic in the air. Can't grow food in the soil because drinking water, air is unsafe. It's all because it's of idiot crowd mitigation, encouraging you to just so that they don't have to alter their behavior. All right? They are no better than the Republicans and Democrats they pretend to criticize, because they are selfish, stupid, petulant little children who want what they want, and they don't care about you, they don't care about your families, they don't care about your life or your health or your well-being. With their Rage Against the War Machine charade back in March of this year, they were partnering up with credibly accused sexual predator Nick Brana, who, when he isn't embezzling money from the People's Party, is palling around with the LaRoucheite cultists. They threw Black Lives Matter activists under the bus. Jimmy Dore was defending murderer Kyle Rittenhouse, a white supremacist who illegally went to Kenosha, Wisconsin to obtain he was underage and illegally purchased a weapon, an assault weapon with which to go kill Black Lives Matter's protesters, and he shot and killed 2 people who tried to disarm him when he approached them with his weapon raised. And then of course he was acquitted in a show trial where the judge acted as de facto co-counsel for the defense, tied the prosecutor's hands, prejudiced the jury against the victims. It was all over the news, and Jimmy Dore and Glenn Greenwald and these fucks were all defending Rittenhouse and calling him a hero and smearing the murder victims, who are dead and can't defend themselves. And then of course they're throwing LGBTQIA people under the bus, parroting the rhetoric of the far right, calling them groomers and pedophiles, when, as I've shown, it's actually Elon Musk and the far right who are the groomers and the pedophiles, all right? Sinead O'Connor unfortunately passed away this week at the age of 56. Actually caused a great deal of controversy in the early 90s, tearing up a picture of Pope John Paul, who presided over the Catholic Church sex abuse scandals that rocked the nation and the world, and continued under his successor, John Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI and later had to resign in disgrace under embezzlement scandals. So the accuse of an authoritarian predators, but also accuse extreme rights. The Democrats, whether it's T.Y. Jimmy Dore and his Glenn Greenwald, whether it's Elon Musk, they're all, every accusation, right? They're the and the race you to be of the other, you to be afraid of people. They want you of heterosexual afraid and who try to their rights. They want people. They want you to be of vaccines and design life vaccines. They want taking steps and others from preventable death. They want you as they afraid. People who are different, they of taking care of the people from spreading a viral and go out and get infected. Believe that from, of course, they decimated. They don't die from symptoms, becoming 1 in 10 people COVID become so you people wearing, they keep who wear masks and they want them, and no, they want to not get die. They want you to live in fear of gay people, of bisexuals, of lesbians. Of transgender people. They want you to be afraid of black and Hispanic people. They want you to be afraid of people who wear masks. They want you to be afraid of vaccines, even though there's no reason to be afraid of them. They want you to be afraid of the world itself. They want to instill paranoia in you that the world is out to get you, and that they, and not anyone else, are trying to protect you. Okay, they're no better than Bill O'Reilly and Tucker Carlson and Sean Insanity and all the other right-wing extremist liars who make their money deceiving you, because they want to be seen as a white saviors coming to rescue you from a world that's out to get you. And the truth that they are afraid you will find out, is that yes, we are destroying our own planet. We are bringing pandemics in from nature because we engage in unsustainable farming and livestock practices that bring us into contact with novel viruses. And as the planet heats up, more and more of those viruses are getting away from where they were in nature and coming into contact with humans. And because we had no contact, why do you think Native Americans, indigenous Americans, were so decimated by European diseases? Because they've been separated by thousands of years of separate evolution, where indigenous Americans no longer had any immune responses to things like gonorrhea and syphilis and smallpox, things that Europeans had learned to live with. And when I say learn to live with, I really mean learn to die with, because until vaccines came along, people still died from these in huge numbers. But they didn't die in as many numbers as the indigenous populations. And so when Europeans came to this continent, the people who had no natural defenses against these ended up dying by the millions. So, that is history. That is part of the consequences of human actions. All right, just like global warming, that's now probably going to end us all in our lifetimes. Okay, my kids are not going to grow up to be adults because the planet they live on is going to be too hot for them to live. Okay, we're already reaching temperatures in parts of the world where you cannot go outside for more than 5 minutes until before you literally boil to death in your own juices. Live at a place where it's 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Literally trap out there. So we can take all that, try and pull ourselves past more time. Solution can survive, but no, it's until the end comes, which will probably be years. I know this. It is that we have to spread of COVID. We have to act pox and H5 bird flu working around. That has 50 to 60, and it's already lethal. If it goes to mission, we're screwed. We can prevent it. We global warming from Earth as we know wants to, because a position about it alter behavior, because them power influence, and it costs them, and they don't want to do it. Rather, life on the planet that power. And Gun Greenwald and Joe Biden to be afraid of action, because they don't want to lose. They alter because they lie to you and tell you they big deal. The vaccines are taken. They do that are effective. They lie somehow to children. Trump and Joe Biden. Okay, Biden, women and little girls. He's the one. Okay, some trans just try to live normal in the body. How heard. Okay, every false accusation by the extreme right is a confession. Andrew Tate is under house arrest in Romania awaiting trial on human sex trafficking and rape charges. And he's one of the biggest proliferators of lies, accusing the left and LGBTQ folk of being groomers. What he really says is he's the groomer, that he's the rapist, that he's a sex trafficker. But he wants to deflect blame and consequences away from himself and onto other people so that he doesn't have to take the consequences of his actions. Well, unfortunately, for him anyway, fortunately for everyone else, he is stupid. And when he tried to call out Greta Thunberg on one of her tweets, he gave away his location to Romanian authorities, and as a result he got himself arrested and thrown in jail for like a month or two until he managed to connive his way into house arrest, but he's still awaiting trial. So then of course you got Matt Walsh, Tim Pool, people who accuse LGBTQ people of trying to groom kids, and they're making arguments for marrying 13-year-olds. Vaush V, the guy who calls Russians Nazis, but simps for literal Nazis in Ukraine, and also advocates for lowering the age of consent because he wants to fuck 16-year-olds. Now, all of these people are lying to you. They are trying to divide you from groups that you have in common with. Black and brown people, non-heterosexuals, women, the disabled, workers who actually care about